Indeed, an amazing journey you had shared with us, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We hope the wonderful audience here will surely assimilate these learning for greater good.
Next, I am privileged to announce the presence of Dr. Kunal Gupta sir with us. Due to some prior commitment, sir would connect us through a virtual platform. Meanwhile, the technical team makes some arrangements. Sir, we are ready to interact with sir through this globalized networking technology. Good afternoon, sir. We are privileged to welcome you here.
It's our privilege to introduce Dr. Kunal Gupta. Dr. Kunal Gupta got his PhD in environmental engineering from Texas A&M University and his master from IIT Delhi. He is currently working as ACS Outreach Manager at ACS India. He is associated with the Indian scientific community with the goal growing and sustaining the ACS community in India. And to better the understand how ACS can support the Indian scientific enterprises. We acknowledge your gracious presence, sir.
Requesting sir to take up the spotlight and share his knowledgeable insight with us.
So thank you so much for inviting me. I hope I'm audible to the audience members there. If you can kind of maybe just raise your hands. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm not going, as you can see on the slide deck, I'm not going into the presenter mode because I would like to see you guys as well and some technical issues. So I just kind of keeping it simple and it's more interactive, some understanding about ACS. So I hope we can have a good session. So, first of all, let me thank Professor Archana Rani, who invited me, and the student chapter members who are organizing this event and who invited me. And I'm really glad that they were able to do accommodate me on a virtual level. And it kind of is. And I think I can start on a very simplistic note, saying that this is a great example of how us as humans have continued to learn even through traversity. And the COVID-19 brought a lot of bad things for us, and it continues to do so. But we have, to some extent, overcome it, and we'll continue to fight through it. And the way we are interacting today is just a perfect example of how we have been able to take and challenge and convert it into an opportunity, and now employing it on a regular basis. So today, as you can see, this is the title of my talk, ACS at Youth in Science, DTU. Glad to be interacting with a science audience, a youth in science, or generally how I look at it as people who have an appetite for science and all sorts of it. And ACS, just for an introduction, ACS stands for American Chemical Society. So, yeah. So ACS was started in 19th century. That's 1876, and I'm not going to bore you with the details of when what happened. And you can read it on the slide. It's just to give you an understanding. However, give you a perspective, like when we're talking about something starting in 1876, where the world was. This is some facts that you can kind of relate to, and I think a lot of people who are coming from the science audience, and because it's a technological university, you can really appreciate the fact that back in 1876 there were no cars existing in America. Alexander Graham Bell was still inventing the telephone. We are literally right now 140 years down the line. We are actually communicating with each other through a video phone, to be precise, right? And Alexander Graham Bell was still inventing the telephone. Dmitry Mendeleev, as you might remember, someone put up the periodic table together. He had formulated the periodic table only 7 years prior. And well, for an American perspective, it was a centennial year for the Declaration of Independence. But why just America? Why not look at it how it was in India? So it in India, 1876 marked the beginning of the crown rule in India. So Queen Victoria was declared the Empress of India, and it was also a black kind of a dark period for India. 1876 to 1878 was where India was suffering and going through the Great Famine. Close to 6 crores of Indian population was distressed or under distress in this famine. So that just to give you a context of where or what was happening in 1876 and where ACS comes from. So if anything, since we are talking about youth in science, ACS in a sense being 140-year-old is literally the great grandfather in science. So, where we are right now, we are all sorts of places. We are in more than 150 countries. We are 100 plus international chapters, more than 1,70,000 members. And this is somewhere in these numbers, there is India. There in somewhere in these numbers, there is Delhi Technological University. Somewhere in these numbers, there are students and faculty members of the Delhi Technological University. I'm really glad to actually have that. Now, since I mentioned international chapters, and that is one of the things we'll talk about later on as well, and DTU actually has the presence of the chapter, so we'll have some discussion around that as well. So, ACS student chapters, just like ACS being great grandfather in science, has had its presence with students since 1937, and it has continued to grow. As I mentioned, more than 100 international chapters. So, and as I mentioned, I'm really glad to have ACS DTU, student chapter in Delhi Technological University, and this is where I really want to acknowledge the zeal and the efforts of the faculty members at DTU. Credit to Professor Archana Rayu taking the effort to get this chapter started, and a great amount of credit to the students who have continued to sustain this chapter. And we are really looking forward to maintaining this interaction, and hopefully soon enough we'll have an in-person interaction as well, and have that personal intimate in-person to person feeling as well during an interaction. But I would really like to congratulate all of you, all the student member audience, and especially the student office bearers right now for having this chapter there, and I hope that you can continue doing what you have been doing. So congratulations on that. So what's all this about? Why all this introduction around ACS? What exactly do you gain out of how you can take advantage of ACS essentially, right? That's simply speaking, and how you can take advantage of having a student chapter in DTU for that matter. So, well, simply look at what ACS has its vision and mission. ACS vision is improving people's lives through the transforming power of chemistry. Its mission, it's advancing the chemistry enterprise and its practitioners for the benefit of Earth and its people. But this is where I want to add a nuance. People might say, oh, ACS is a society for chemists. ACS is broadening chemistry enterprise, transforming power of chemistry. But no, it's no longer just chemistry. No science can work on its own alone. It has to be an interdisciplinary science. It has to be multidisciplinary. It has to be transdisciplinary. So it's now I would that's how I would like to put. Its ACS vision is improving people's lives through the transforming power of science and advancing the broader science enterprise and its practitioner. So, now I have given you context how you can take advantage of ACS by looking at ACS vision and mission. So, what ACS is exactly doing? So, I'm really glad that the chapter has done this event on such a great occasion, National Youth Day. And whose words better than Swami Vivekanand and his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, than to actually aspire towards and than to see how we can actually make sense out of it. So I was trying to find a quote and I found Vivekanand kind of quoting Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. That's a great way to kind of pay homage to his own guru and to the guru of ours. So as long as I live, so long do I learn. Now, this is the motto I hope the youth in science today can really abide by. Because as long as you live, you are going to be learning. And why? Because a man or a society, as Vivekanand has said, which has nothing to learn is already in the jaws of death. So this is the kind of understanding I hope that students that sitting in this event under the name of youth and science can actually aspire to, can actually abide by, and can really kind of internalize this sentiment that what Ramakrishna Paramhans and Vivekanand has tried to put out. So, what is something that is, how do we connect that those sayings from the past, if anything, but very relevant today, and connect it to something that is happening today and that we need to do today, that is learning from outside the classroom. Learning happens in classroom, no doubt, but there is so much learning that you can do outside of the classroom. And as you can hopefully read the tagline, it is not an option but a requirement. So I promise Professor Narani and the DTU chapter members that we'll keep this session interactive. And I have had like, what, 10 minutes of monologue already. So let's do a kind of a game kind of thing. Let's do some logical and critical thinking a little bit quickly. So I hope that my student volunteers can help me in this one. So I have a first question for my students and this audience member, and hopefully you have some certain things lying around. So can you in your vicinity just pick up something metallic which has been lying around you, and pick up something plastic or wooden in your hand? Please, I would really want some volunteers out now.
Sir, can you please pardon the question?
So I want some volunteer members from the audience to pick up something metallic and something plastic. One in one hand, one in other hand. So do we have any volunteers, or we'll have to go?
Hello.
Hello. Sir, Shreya is the girl who is volunteering. Shreya, can you? You can go there. Yeah. And you can show in back.
So, well, thank you so much for volunteering. So now I have a question for you, and I don't know if you can answer me or not, but here's the question. Now you have two different objects. One is metallic, one is plastic. Can you tell me? Can you feel a difference between the two in terms of temperature when you are touching them? Like one is hot, warm, cold, whatever. Okay, and the plastic is hotter. But wouldn't you agree that right now the temperature of the whole room and every object should be the same? Yes. So can you explain to me why you feel that difference in the temperature of the two objects, even though they both are in the same room, sitting in the same room right now? Okay. Uh-huh. So, okay, that's a very good point. So, can you go a little bit deeper? What's the conductivity have to do with what you're feeling right now, the difference in temperature? Okay, maybe your friends in the audience can help you. Someone take the hint that I think Shreya has already talked about conductivity. Exactly. Yes, that's the correct answer. So I think this is what I wanted to present out of. This is not something I would say. Yes, thank you for that. And thank you, Shreya, for volunteering. And maybe if you can stick around, I have another question after this. But what I wanted to point out that this is an idea, that this is what I want you to kind of think about when you're learning in your surroundings. That when we think about temperature, we think about temperature as being something static. We can feel the temperature. But suddenly now you realize, and your friend very smartly answered that there is temperature is dynamic. What we really feel is the difference in temperature and the transfer of energy. So if you're touching a metal object, the energy from your body is going out in the surroundings, which is colder because your body is generally on a higher temperature. So that's what you're feeling. You're feeling the energy going out, and that's why you feel it as colder. That's why you don't like to sit on a metallic chair in winters, but you'll prefer to sit on a wooden chair in winters, because wooden chair very quickly would get warm and accomplish or like become amicable to your body temperature. So this is something I generally like when I'm talking to some JE aspirants. I talk to them and I always tell them that remember this idea of heat exchange rather than temperature. What you feel is the flow of energy rather than the temperature of the object. So this was just a kind of an example of learning that can happen all around you, learning outside the classroom. So now, this brings me to the next question. You can see on the slide deck, I hope it's not visible. I have a sequence of number right now. It's a very small sequence, 369. Very simple. Now, I want one of the audience members to very quickly just look at the sequence of numbers and tell me what is the rule behind that sequence of numbers. Very quickly.
You can raise your hands. You can use also. This on.
3 into 1, 3 into 2, 3 into 3.
Okay, perfect. So that is certainly one rule. You can say that that is a rule governing the sequence. But can you give me another rule?
Yes, you can.
3 plus 1, 3 plus 2, 3 plus, oh sorry, 3 plus 1 and 3 plus, सर ये odd even का हो जाएगा फिर ये.
Sir, we
Okay.
can say arithmetic progression.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Fine. Any other thing? Can you give me a
Sir,
generic
common
rule?
difference is 3.
Sir,
Okay.
can you
Let
say
me
about
let me give.
AP?
Sorry.
Common
AP,
difference is
sir.
3. Common
Please
difference
repeat
is
that.
3,
I
7.
could not hear you.
Divyansh, you can.
Sir, did you hear about AP?
About like arithmetic progression. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's very similar. Okay. That's fine. So let me give you another sequence. So if I say that the rule that is governing this sequence can also be followed in the sequence uh, 1, 7, and 21. No, 1, 7, and 13.
Sir, I think they are all random.
Okay, they are
Sir,
random, but
random
there
is
is
a
a rule. What is the rule?
sir randomness. You are giving anything any numbers you prefer.
Exactly. Yes. So I think what's your name?
My name is Ujjwal sir.
Sorry, please repeat
Ujjwal
that.
sir.
Gulshan. Okay.
Sir, Ujjwal.
Ujjwal, fine.
Ujjwal
So,
Chauhan.
Ujjwal, you have aptly pointed out what's the rule. It is any sequence of numbers. So, it's a generic rule. It can cover anything. I can say 500,000, 2,000. I can say million, 2 million, 3 million. It's can be any number. It can be 1, 2, 3, 3, 5, 7, whatever I can think of. So, again, what I wanted to kind of present here is that not always the most obvious things are the right answers. There is so much more into the details. So always look for that finer details. I hope you have heard the phrase reading between the lines. So that's the kind of idea that can happen outside of the classroom when you start learning outside of the classroom. So that was some fun that I wanted to do, and I'm really glad some of the audience members have been able to interact with me. So thank you so much. So now I'll continue. Thank you so much. So I think now I'll go back to a little bit more around ACS and something related to what. Um, so ACS can help you in terms of learning outside the classroom. Now I would really recommend kind of going out and search for this particular magazine. This is the CNEN magazine. You can get free newsletters for it, and you can read free 2 to 3 articles on a monthly basis, and it basically covers one of the more advanced engineering research that is happening, but that's more relevant research. So I hope all of you are interested in, well, solar recycling challenges. We all are talking about solar farms, but what would really happen when these solar cells or these solar panels basically start losing their efficiency? So that's where the idea of solar recycling comes in. So you should be aware about it. We are wearing so many clothes on a regular basis. There's so much clothes out there. What's happening to these clothes? Recycling of textiles. And there is a whole bunch and a lot of material that you can really be aware of, microplastics. And this is again the part of awareness. The more you're aware of, the more how I think there is a phrase, I'll put it out here right now because it came to me. We've always heard about the idea that to think outside the box. My point is, stop thinking outside the box and start thinking inside the box. But on the same time, start increasing the boundary of your boxes. The more the boundary of your boxes, the more your knowledge spectrum is, and the more you can really think. So that's what these opportunities of learning outside the classroom are about. There is more ACS Discovery Report. This is more sophisticated, more research oriented, very, very specific topics. So look for these things. You can find it on ACS websites. If you're interested in AIs, go for it. Look at the specific edition. So what they do every quarter, they basically compile the top research on a specific topic of interest, and they basically publish it, and then you can actually go through it. It basically helps you to be aware and also know about the most advanced research. Another feature, ACS Webinars Library. This is an opportunity for ACS members. So if you are DTU student chapter members, you can become an ACS member and actually go through a webinars library. I have had students. I know one of the chapters is in Bombay College of Pharmacy, and they were talking about, and I think some of the chapter members might be aware of them as well. So I was talking to one of their presidents, a student president. So he mentioned that he did a lot of undergraduate research, and I was really happy, pleasantly surprised actually, that he mentioned that his BTech project or his undergraduate project actually came out through a bunch of pharmaceutical ACS webinars that he was able to access through the ACS webinars library. So this was kind of a usage that he was able to develop. And I really, essentially, what ACS webinars is bringing a lot of experts from all around the world to you, giving you access to them. And this is just a library. The library is accessible later on, but there are live webinars as well. And we have done a lot of India focused webinars where we had brought in Indian experts to talk about India based challenges. So, carbon capture, you might have heard that the government of India has set up these carbon capture and sequestration centers all across top institutes in India. So, we brought in an expert to talk about it. So, that was our focus on India essentially, and we continue to do a lot of other webinars. This was a past webinar we did on science communication. So we brought in one of Tata Institute of Fundamental Research Professor Sandhya Kaushika, to talk about what it means to communicate science. And it really, if you, I don't know all of you had a chance to or not, but she talked about her experience being a biology researcher, talking around COVID, trying to communicate the ideas around COVID vaccine, the symptoms of COVID to the general masses. So, this is the kind of science communication. And really, you students who are learning science today should be able to communicate the science to the people around you. There are your family members who would want to sometimes understand the fundamentals behind it. And you guys are the best people to explain the fundamentals. And remember, I think again, I'm just going out off tangents here, but this is something that's just kind of remembering. And because I have a great listening audience, so I'll take the advantage here. Remember Richard Feynman's technique of learning, because we are talking about learning here. So he basically stepped out learning in four phases. First, you should read. Second, you should write what you have read. Third, review the whole material. So essentially, when you have read it, you've written it. Now review what you have written and what you have forgotten, and go back and do the three things again. And the fourth thing being that if you really want to master the subject, you should be able to explain it to someone else. So remember this four steps, and that's where science communication comes in. Beyond that, there is more learning that ACS can offer to you. There's ACS Institute. A bunch of courses at ACS Institute are free of charge courses, and you get certificates as well. I would really recommend to explore that. I'll share some of the resources with the chapter, and they can share it with you guys. And many of these courses are on professional development and scientific skill development as well. So if you're interested in taking your career from an undergrad to a research scholar to maybe an academic professor someday, there are levels of development that you'll require, and ACS Institute can certainly be a good place to start to upskill yourself. Then there is a new benefit that we have, and this is, I think, should be. I am hoping that every person in India, for that matter, every student in India should be actually taking a PCS membership to gain access to LinkedIn Learning. Why? Well, very tangibly, I'm going to talk very straight economic level. LinkedIn Learning right now in India, if you go and buy, you'll have to pay 1,600 rupees a month to access LinkedIn Learning. And I really recommend LinkedIn Learning for any level of education, because it has access to all sorts of courses. And one of the best courses I would say is around Excel. If you really master the Excel skills, and I hope you are aware of MS Excel, if you master that, you would have a huge number of job opportunities across a domain of industries. So LinkedIn Learning is there. But coming back to the economical aspect of it, well, if you want to access LinkedIn Learning today, you'll have to pay 1,600 a month, or if you take an annual subscription, you pay 700 a month. But ACS membership comes to you for undergrad students, it's 800 rupees for a year, and for graduate students, 1,600. I'm not talking money here. I'm just trying to give you an idea that ACS membership has a tangible benefit for you, which has an economical advantage as well. In addition to everything else that ACS membership has to offer to you, LinkedIn Learning is just one of the benefits. But it's okay if you're not interested in membership, but do look at all the resources that I've been talking about. Now, we're talking about learning, we're talking about education. Why do we all want to do this? What is the whole funda behind having education, or anything that you do in terms of learning? Well, at the end, you want a career out of it. You want a well, a lot of people talk about having a passion towards something. Well, even passion leads to a career. There has to be a career. And then the question comes, and I'm sure there are a lot of students sitting in the audience, and I was one of the audience members a few years ago, and not to sound too old, not decade, but a few years ago. And I also had the same questions. Where is my education leading me towards? What career options do I have? What path to take? And the answer, well, it depends. That's the answer. I know it does not give you a perfect answer, but it depends. So let you give you some very interesting story. And I don't know if it seems something it's like gotten old, but I hope people are still aware of the story of Alice in Wonderland. So Alice in Wonderland, basically story is, so Alice, who is a little girl, just falls down a rabbit hole, literal rabbit hole, and it happens to be a magical rabbit hole. She lands there, and she happens to meet a talking cat. Well, the talking cat is very wise. So Alice asks the talking cat, where should I go? What path to take? Exactly when we are asking about what career path to choose, where do we go? And well, the cat simply asks her, where do you want to go? And well, Alice answers, I'm not sure so long as I get somewhere. Now, that's the very important point. And why I said the cat is wise, because the answer to that is that as long as you walk long enough, you're sure to reach somewhere. So it doesn't matter what path you take. So that's an answer. That's a wise answer. But does that really mean that should be the path for everyone? That you choose a path and just keep walking along and you reach somewhere? Is that how you want to go? There is nothing wrong in it. You can do that. to some extent, I would really kind of say that my career trajectory, I don't know in the bio it was apparent or not, has been very much similar to that. I have just continued on a path of learning, and it has taken me where I am right now. And I hope as I continue on the path to learn, I will reach somewhere else as well. But that learning will continue. So, but there can be other ways to approach it as well. And this is just one of the advice. So, what I wanted to kind of bring into the picture is there is, when we are talking about career, there are a lot of factors that drive career. It can be success, which is obviously again an individualistic idea of what you think as success. Wealth, that is, as you can see in the Venn diagram, it's intersected with success. And then there is happiness. So typically these three circles, I would say, that determine our career decision or should determine a career decision. And that's why the intersection of these three is where we say that the informed career decision lies. So this is the kind of point I want to kind of you remember this picture in your head. And whenever you're trying to make a decision for your career, for the kind of learning you want to do, always think in these terms that which path you want to take depends on what is the different success, happiness, and wealth factors that you want to keep in mind. So, this is the idea. Now, there is always, I hope you guys always find a talking cat. You don't fall in a rabbit hole, but you can find a talking cat who is wise enough to tell you based on your answer as to what path to take. And this is where uh, I would say that ACS is glad that it has brought about a bunch of talking cats. So we have these talking cats, who is one is a former DST secretary. He is an IIT professor, Professor Ashutosh Sharma. Another is Dr. Anubhav Saxena, who is R&D president at Pidilite Industries Limited. Shrestha Mittal, who has over 10 years of HR experiences working across different industry domains. Professor Ayan Datta, who is a professor and an accomplished researcher at the School of Chemical Sciences, ISCS Kolkata. And just to give you a reference, ISCS Kolkata is the institute where C.V. Raman basically discovered the Raman effect, and for which he was awarded the Nobel Prize. So that's the legacy of the institute, and somehow it happens that ISCS and ACS share a legacy of being founded in the same year, 1876. But again, not going off tangent. I was talking about talking cats. Well, these are just four talking cats that I could list here, and these are based in India. But there are over 50, or actually more than 100 career advisors that ACS, and these are all volunteer advisors, and these are exactly similar to these profiles. These are experts from all around the world, and you can use these talking cats to actually find answers to your career when you're making that informed career choice. It has to be, and I would really recommend this. Is, I'm sure, I'm very much aware that career consulting is not something we generally think about as students, but and especially in India. But I am really practicing this, and whenever I go, wherever I go, I try to push forward the idea that you don't need to decide on your career by your own self. The trajectory that I took, I think I could have far exceeded this trajectory or reached to this place much, much, much earlier if I would have had the right mentors, if I would have had the right career advice around me. So use these kind of facilities around you. Get access to these career advice portals. I'm really glad that DTU has today organized this session and I'm actually able to speak to you because I feel that the more I talk to the students around these things, the more aware they'll become around making choice around their careers. What are the options out there? And there is a whole lot of resources. ACS is just a one, I think, a grain of salt in a sea of salt, right? If there is a whole sea of salt out there, ACS resources is just a grain of salt in there. But look at all these resources, and the chapter, having the chapter there gives you an advantage to access these resources or get aware about these resources. So that's the point I would like to bring about around the chapter and career advising. I hope this gives you some context. And just to give you a perspective, ACS career advising is, there is no, I would not say that, I would say there is no specific uh, guideline or principle around it, what you want to kind of gauge out of it. Except for a therapy session, you can get everything. If you want, you can get a resume review, you can do mock interviews, you can your LinkedIn profile reviews, you can just general counseling sessions. You can I have had students in India who have interacted with these professors to essentially understand the whole process around the master's program or a PhD program in India or outside of India. So that's the kind of thinking I want you to develop and actually start using these resources. So there is more on career. We have virtual classrooms. These are freely accessible. I hope some of you have attended previous of our courses, virtual classroom. These are master classes which involve a lot of interactive coursework, not a coursework, but an interactive guidelines around how to write a resume or how to network. So there was a lot of interesting things that we have done in the past, and we are coming up with another uh, virtual classroom, and this is going to be around understanding the higher education and job scenario in United States. And the reason why we want to bring this in, because we know a lot of students from India, undergrad and master students, go to US for their higher education, and once they reach there, they are looking for jobs. At the end, it's all about taking your learning into a career. So we wanted to give a flavor of the understanding. We wanted to give our students from India or migrating outside of India to United States to understand what it's like to be part of the higher education spectrum there and how to actually get a job. So we are going to be bringing some high profile experts from who have actually gone through that path. They have gone from India, did their MS in US, did their PhD, and now have started working there, have actually naturalized and become citizens. But there is a path that they have followed. And we are also bringing a advocate firm which will talk about the visa and immigration understanding. So you can take advantage of this virtual classroom if you plan to do a master's or a PhD outside of India and go abroad and do a job and hopefully come back. I really love that students go outside and come back because you can bring that learning back and help others to learn and grow further. So with that, there is some things around membership. Don't want to discuss much about it. You can find me. I think you can connect with me through the chapter, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I'll be happy to engage with you in whatever capacity I can be of help to you. And with that, I would give them some. This is an ACS in India email address. Reach out to us at any point of time. This is the phone number. You can use it to connect with us on WhatsApp. Now, before I bid goodbye and thank you, I would really want to pitch the student chapter here. So the student chapter is essentially how I look at it. Look at is essentially an extended arm of ACS. It is an autonomous body. It gives opportunities to students and faculty members who are part of the student chapter to push forward certain objectives they feel are relevant for the institute, for relevant for the students of the institute, and relevant for the country as whole. As Professor Archana was telling me yesterday, that she wanted this program to be around nation building, which is an excellent idea, which is an excellent, I would say, vision to have. That why one institute should only be talking about their own building? Why not nation building? Each of the student members that are sitting right now there are builders of this nation, are going to be the future builders of this nation. And I would be really glad that I continue to see more of this engagement with the audience, and that's why I'm pitching the student chapter here that all the audience members should try to work as volunteers with the student chapter and hopefully become office bearers as the senior members graduate out. More people can join in and become office bearers. So, and the student chapter for you, I'm hoping I'm soon going to visit the campus, have a personal interaction with you, and hopefully understand your outreach objectives and how we can together take forward your objective and how we can together take the vision and mission of ACS and DTU to the nation out there. So, with that, I would like to thank all of you for paying attention to the screen and uh, and thank you to the chapter and Professor Chirani for giving me this opportunity to interact with such a lovely audience in this virtual mode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful talk that was full of facts and figure. Now, our discussion thus conclude on high note. The event was perfectly aligned with the takeaway of finite ideas and lesson. Additionally, we look forward to inviting you again in the coming times. Your future endeavors for society will add more value to our learning experience.
We are extremely grateful to our delightful speaker for their esteemed presence and enlightening input. We would like to thank the audience for their actively participation throughout the discussion. It is the time to rise with the sense of a being responsible youth of the planet. And thereby, we truly resonated this event with these words of Swami Vivekanand. Every work has to pass through hundreds of difficulties before succeeding. Those who persevere will see the light sooner or later.
Sir, I'm Arjun. I'm a first year student in chemical engineering. I would like to know what sort of career paths are open for students who are members of the ACS and in specifically in the chemical engineering field as well.
Okay. So thank you, Arjun, for that question. And when you're talking about careers for chemical engineers, and not just ACS members, for any chemical engineers for that matter, um, there is, so as I mentioned, for example, Pidilite Industries. So Pidilite has a huge adhesive manufacturing unit. So if you're interested in that kind of a domain, there are jobs in that sector right now. But my understanding, I know I would be very blunt with you in right now. So, as a chemical engineer, undergraduate, BTech, um, in terms of the job prospects, there is very limited opportunity. Why? Because the current type of jobs that are available in the manufacturing sector, which is generally for the chemical engineering sector right now, is basically oriented towards very established processes that are already out there. So, as an engineer, you don't necessarily get a chance to innovate on that, right? So if you really want to develop a career in chemical engineering, I would recommend you to kind of think around it because it's just your first year. It's a really good opportunity for you to kind of start grooming yourself in that direction. And that would be first, learn a lot around designing, chemical engineering design. Now, that is a really innovative field. There is a lot of research opportunities in that. There is a lot of uh, opportunities beyond chemical engineering. That's chemical engineering design, reactor design. But there is another one, and that is something for all the students out there. And it might sound like a very, very cliched advice, but develop your IT skills, develop your coding skills. Remember one thing, there is no company which is no longer a tech company. Every company is a tech company. You go into a chemical engineering manufacturing firm, everything is data driven, everything is now getting automated. So develop your IT coding skills as a chemical engineer, because as a chemical engineer you are much more valuable. So why? So let's say Google has to automate a plant, or not Google, just a hypothetical company has to automate a manufacturing plant. Who would they like to hire? Would they like to hire an IT engineer or a computer science engineer who is excellent at coding but has no idea how a mass transfer operation works, or how a heat transfer operation works? They would be interested in hiring a chemical engineer who knows mass transfer operation applications, who knows the principle of heat transfer, and he or she who knows their coding skills. So focus on that, make sure that you develop these skills, and you're sure to find the right path towards your career. But in your first year, stop thinking about the job, think about the core learning skills that you want to develop your fundamentals, while yes, keep developing your IT skills and coding skills.
Thank you, sir.
Any
How can
questions?
a how can a chemical professional network with other members of ACS?
Okay, can one of the volunteers repeat the question so that I'm understanding it correctly?
Sir, he is asking how can a chemical student uh, associate with ACS?
Okay, so that's a good question, and this is a part of, I think, being part of the ACS network, and this is a way of how you actually leverage a network. So you can become a community associate. It's free of cost, and you become a net part of the network of the ACS community. But that's just the entry point. But there's a lot of effort that you can use to use the network. So one of the resources that ACS recently launched is the ACS link. So the idea of ACS link is to connect you to an expert who is part of the network. So let's say you have a question, you want to understand the research behind the recent Nobel Prize, the bioorthogonal chemistry, just for an example. So who do you reach out to? Well, you can put a question in ACS link, and ACS link, and that might sound cliched, tries to use artificial intelligence to connect you to a network of professionals who would have the best answer to your question. So that is a way of leveraging the ACS network. There is more how you can leverage the ACS network. Well, as I mentioned, one of the presidents of the ACS student chapter in another institute, what she was able to do that she leveraged the network to get internship opportunities in pharmaceutical industries. How? Because she continued to organize a lot of outreach work for the chapter, volunteered for the chapter programs, and started working with these professionals, started interacting with these professionals through phone calls, through emails. Just like, for example, let's say some of you are interested in working as an intern with ACS. Let's say an ACS has an internship opportunity available. So then now you know me, you know your professors, you know the student chapter members, you can reach out to them that you're interested, there's opportunity, then they can reach out to me. So that's how network works, that's how networking works. First become part of the network and then start leveraging the network in whatever way possible. And many a times it's just useful to just reach out to anyone in the network and tell them, well, I'm interested in interacting with you, can you spare me 10 minutes of your time and give me a small informational interview, and just ask all sorts of questions. So that's how you leverage network. That's the idea I can present right now.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us.